All right, so now that we've actually done the practice of Qigong, let's go in a little bit deeper on what is Qigong, the historic roots of it, and how that ties into martial arts, especially for those who are martial arts practitioners, okay? So Qigong is Chinese, and it is represented by these logograms, all right? This logogram represents breath, air, vital energy, and this logogram represents work or practice. So it literally means the practice of cultivating breath, air, or energy, distributing air and energy, right? Since we practice a Korean martial art, the translation of that is Qigong. So you may have heard Qi in your studies, like from Hapkido, right? That's the translation of that in Korean. What are some of the benefits? Body coordination, okay? When practicing Qigong, it improves your strength of your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, your fascia, all right? It also improves your mobility and flexibility, and all of those body coordination benefits lead into having improved balance. It also leads to improved circulation. So not just blood flow and all of the nutrients and the cells that go into the blood flow, the bloodstream, but it also improves your immune system. It also lowers your blood pressure. It also lowers inflammation. So anyone who has arthritis, that's an example of where Qigong can benefit for that practitioner. And also stress. It reduces cortisol levels. So when you lower your cortisol levels and you lower your stress, ideally you would have improved mental health outcomes, improved cognitive performance, and hopefully you sleep better at night. Okay? So where did Qigong come from? So historically, it was said that in ancient China, there were villagers who would work during the day, and then by night, they started to realize that instead of like maybe resting or doing absolutely nothing physically, that by doing dances that imitated movements of animals that they've seen during the day, that it helped them ward off illness and disease. So these dance-like rituals that copied animal movements became their nightly tradition. And originally, it was referenced as Dao Yin. Dao Yin means leading and guiding of energy, all right? Eventually, Dao Yin became referenced as Qigong. And one of the first references of Qigong came from the Yellow Emperor's classic. The Yellow Emperor, quote unquote, is Hwang. It was also referenced by Confucius. It was also referenced by Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher and the author of the Tao Te Ching. It was also referenced by Bodhidharma. In Chinese, Bodhidharma was referred to as Damo. And Damo was credited for teaching Qigong to the Shaolin monks at the Shaolin Temple to help them stay healthier for their daily practices. There's also a Chinese general named Yue Fei, who was credited to have never lost a battle or a war, and he introduced Qigong practice to his military, again, to help them keep healthy and be ready for combat. He's been credited for the creation of Baduanjin, which is the same Qigong that you just practiced today. However, supposedly there were originally 12 postures, and how many postures did we practice today? 8, right? So now probably your natural question is, what happened to the remaining 4, right? And this leads to what typically happens both in Qigong practice and martial arts lineages, secrecy and gatekeeping, all right? So way back then, right, you were responsible for defending your houses. So think about Bodhidharma introducing Qigong to the Shaolin monks, right? Shaolin monks were known for today as for their physical prowess, for their martial arts ability, but they weren't such back then. They actually had to ask for help to help them defend their temples from invaders until they started getting healthier and they started getting better at their craft, right? So the idea of keeping your secrets to yourself so that your enemies don't know your secret techniques, so that they can't use their techniques against you, right? That's how these things became secret. And they're typically only passed on within families, within houses. So that's where when families start to kind of pass it down, especially if it's unwritten, it's all verbal, you know this when it happens to a game of telephone. Things start to change, right? And so it's very possible that Ba Duan Jin was originally 12, but then now today commonly practiced with 8 postures. And the postures that I taught you today may be taught slightly differently by someone else, okay? So how did all of these techniques, whether it's Qigong or even martial arts, get passed around region to region? So remember our friends, the Shaolin monks, right? A lot of times, locals met and communed with tradesmen and diplomats from other regions at common places of gathering, and they're usually the temples. So now, if we look at the roots of some of the martial arts, including the martial arts that we practice here, we now end up talking about how some of these secrets started to get disseminated into other regions like Okinawa. So in Okinawa, the locals there had their own martial arts practice. And they started to meet with Chinese diplomats and tradesmen, started to exchange information in common places of gatherings, and then they started to incorporate what they've learned from these Chinese and diplomats and tradesmen into their local martial arts practice, all right? And so somewhere along the way, the Okinawans started to name their martial art as Tore. 2 different spellings, but basically the same thing, okay? What we're gonna look at now is take a look at the etymology of what this is in kanji, right? 2 syllables, we'll split them up. So to, okay, this is Okinawan. In kanji, it is written like this. Okay? For you folks, this might look very familiar. All right? This logogram in Japanese can also be pronounced as kara. Okay? In Korean, it's pronounced Tang. Okay? Now, Tang, not necessarily specifically, related to the Tang dynasty, but at that time, Tang was the descriptor used for anything that was from China. So this literally means China, okay? Now, let's take a look at te. All right? This one's a little easier. That looks familiar to my martial arts folks? Te, in both Okinawan, Japanese, okay, is the same pronunciation. In Korean, it's pronounced su. Now you're starting to kind of see something that's pronounced in modern day era. To, te, kara, te, tang, su. So now you're asking, where's the do, right? Because normally it's said karate do, Dangsudo, right? This is the logogram for do.
Someone was detected at your front door.
Yes. It's a party. Okay. So this logogram, pronounced do, guess what? All of them pronounce it the same way. Okinawan, Japanese, and Korean. In Chinese, it's pronounced Dao. Dao, by itself, is often translated as the way. A lot of the martial arts practitioners, they're familiar with another term in their aspect of training called Neigong, right? The 3 powers, Shimgong, Neigong, Weigong. Shimgong often translating to mental or spiritual intention. Neigong, internal power. Weigong, external power. Neigong is actually a higher form of Qigong where you can use the qualities that you've cultivated in Qigong practice for an advanced specific purpose. In this case, the use of elastic power generation to deliver martial techniques. Right? But that requires a lot of what? Body coordination, intent, breathing, things like that. Okay? And also careful thought, because doing martial arts can be dangerous to yourself and to somebody else. So we don't just deliberately practice any kind of martial arts techniques without careful consideration discernment, right? So how does this now play into our modern day practice of Dangsudo? Okay. Our creator is Grandmaster Hwang, a Korean native. And Hwang studied a lot of martial arts, including Okinawan karate textbooks. It is also claimed that he studied under Lee Won-kook, who is the founder of Chunokwan, and who is also a direct student of Funakoshi Gichin. Funakoshi Gichin is the founder and creator of Shotokan karate style. So in Hwang-gi's 1970 book, not only does he outline all of his hyang or forms, but he also includes supplemental practice like Qigong, and he specifically named 3 Qigong sets. The Yi Jin Jing, which is the muscle tendon change classic, also from China. The Cui Bing Yan Yan Fa, and then a sitting version of the Shi'er Duan Jin. Shi'er is Chinese for 12, so that translates to 12 brocades. Remember that 12 number that we just talked about? Okay, so again, you're seeing a lot of variations on a lot of things where both Qigong and martial arts go together, so that the martial artist can cultivate a body that is ready for martial arts training. So that's why it's just as important part of your martial arts training. Any questions, comments, feedback? Awesome.